here for Invictus Gaming, that old school esports team, you know, right around the same time when Loco started streaming, to show how old it is. In the red, it's XY.
Give or take, you know. Back in the early 80s. Those were the days. His opponent in the top left, a very confusing username, but he's playing with the blue Protoss pieces. It's SCV. You know, BO, I was casting a game in this same tournament on this exact same map featuring XY. I think about maybe a week and a half or so ago. And in that particular game, I have dreamed of that game. I don't know if they're nightmares or dreams. It's honestly hard to say. But in that particular game, XY was going up against a Zerg player. He refused to make Liberators, but he did fill literally his entire side of the map up with command centers. I don't think I've ever seen a Terran player make over 30 command centers in a game of StarCraft 2 before that particular match. Like, XY just kept adding on. And I think he would have made more CCs if he had the space for them. But he just ran out of just surface area, you know? Like, there was no area for him to put down a 5x5 structure anymore. So I'm getting flashbacks here, seeing XY play on Oceanborn once again, but I'd be very surprised if he makes even remotely as many here against Protoss.
Well, you know, Loco, it does make a lot of sense, because what do you need to build command centers?
SCVs.
Exactly. So XY was just mentally getting you prepped for this series. That's what it is.
You know, it took me like a decade of playing StarCraft 2 to realize that SCV is an abbreviation for Space Construction Vehicle. That absolutely blew my mind. I had no idea.
So here's my complaint. You talk about SCVs. So clearly the Terran Dominion, or whatever, yeah, the Terrans, right? Clearly they have the tech.
The humans.
The humies. Clearly they have the tech to build robotic mining things, right? Great.
Yes.
Like mules, they're more efficient, they do better. And somehow, despite that, we're putting people in suits to go die. Because, like, I would argue that, you know, more SCVs die in a game of StarCraft than most other units in a lot of games. And we're saying, like, we're going to sacrifice people when robots can be made cheaper, better, more efficiently, called down from space. You know, it's all these beautiful things. But no, because we want people to die in their little robot suits instead. That has never made sense to me, Loco.
They do shout, woohoo, overtime, all right? Like, maybe they're just very excited to be working. I've always thought that voice line was ironic, and they're like, oh no, overtime, right? Woohoo, I guess I'm so excited about it. But maybe, this is an argument to be made, I guess. Maybe they are actually genuinely excited about overtime, and they just want to work. They just want to harvest the minerals.
You know, Loco, they got like 15 kids back at home, and they're supporting their grandparents and their great-grandparents on both sides. And it's not woohoo, overtime, because they're excited about working 20 hours a day.
Could be.
But it's woohoo, overtime, I can like afford my family.
Maybe. It's a tough life though, being an SCV. That is for certain. Going up against Protoss, there's a load of ways in which you can accidentally die here. Yeah. We'll see what SCV decides to go for. It's gonna be a robo facility to get things started here, together with a Twilight Council as well. So the good old Blink opener once more. How many gateways are we gonna build? It looks like we have 3 for now.
Yeah, it's not committal. It's one of those, you can get aggressive if you want, you can get defensive if you want. We're really going to have a good idea about what's happening when the robo's done. Is there a warp prism going to get made? Is it just going to be for, obviously, you want observers? They have been buffed a little bit, so that does, we build them a little bit faster. That does help out. But for now, this drop coming from XY is pretty cool. It's a Cyclone. It's 4 Marines. It's hitting at a time when Blink is going to be done. So, the Stalkers are going to be on the other side of the map. And at the start here, we talk about many ways that Protoss can kill Terrans. This is one of the ways that Terran can kill a Protoss. You sneak a drop in, you get some damage done. For them, XY is moving across the map with Marines and tanks as well into this. This is wild here.
Blink at this point is done though, and he needs to be very cautious because so frequently do we see these Terran armies get cleaned up whilst they're marching towards the other side of the map. If you can get the Prism, that'd be huge. We'll be able to stay alive for the time being. There is an Immortal out though, and Immortals are really good against siege tanks. Honestly, these tanks are barely supported. I wonder if XY should be driving home rather than sieging up.
This is a 2-base all-in. This is kind of, or 1.5 base timing. This is something that we see Hero Marine do quite a bit, right? With tanks and Liberators. And I mean, I said that, but he's building a 3rd base, so never mind. I don't know, Loco.
After that previous series, we gotta throw everything we know about StarCraft out of the window. That has a silky match, not quite your conventional game of StarCraft, and this also is certainly off to a bit of a wild start. So we do have that, okay, Medevac staying alive for the time being. XY still trying to slow push with the siege tanks, but especially if you're gonna make a third CC, should you not try to save these units? He really feels like he can get something done here.
I mean, he's got a third tank, right? So
yeah,
like,
a lot of damage.
Everything gets annihilated. The Colossus aren't out yet, obviously, but even still, Liberator got some damage done. Force the Stalkers over. If you can get the pylon, that means the shield battery, any sort of overcharge is gonna not be on the table. But at this point, even with 3 tanks, I mean, these are mortal Stalkers. Yes, they take damage, but they also annihilate tanks on the burst. And now all of a sudden, XY, he's not gonna lose the medevac somehow, which on 5 HP is really impressive. But he just lost the push. And like, what are you gonna do here? Stim is not even started. It's certainly not done. Tanks are being made. Finally, we're getting double eBay. This is certainly not meta. I think that's the way to talk about it. This is not how Terrans play.
No, this is not usually the way that Terrans like to approach this matchup. But of course, if he can get his Stimpak going and he's gonna finish up his combat shields eventually, we'll probably see 1-1 fire up here in just a moment with his engineering base. He should be able to transition towards at least something that looks relatively normal. Main issue right here for XY is going to be securing the third base. So yeah, that's what he's going to attempt right now. But I think he's got enough moving parts here in his army, yeah, to get that third base started pretty easily. In the meantime, on the other side of the map, we've got ourselves a Robo Bay, and we have just a whole lot of infrastructure and tech production here for SCV. Not really worried about a Terran moving out, because he very well knows that those upgrades that you're currently looking at on the right side of the production tab, those are still a while away. And, well, until those upgrades are finished, he's got free control of the map. He's going to go for a 4th Nexus 2. Main question is, right, when do you go back to that unit production? Because if you just keep making economy and keep making tech, at some point you're going to get overwhelmed by a Terran.
I think the answer is you don't. You just build as many Nexi in this game as XY built command centers against me and Mike. I think that's how you play. Although in general, actually, we talked about this in the first series that we had with Nanami. Chinese Protoss players are really good at being greedy in terms of how many Nexi they get. For whatever reason, it seems to be a hallmark of how a lot of Chinese Protoss players play. They just expand super aggressively as that happens. And buckle up here, Loco, because look at this wall that's getting set up. XY is signaling that he has no desire to play an aggressive game of StarCraft, right? This feels like a game where we're going to see a lot of command centers.
This does feel like a game where we're going to see a lot of command centers. I don't think it's going to be quite as many as last time around on Oceanborn, but I guess only time will tell here, as we do have a couple of Zealots unloaded. Now this is, of course, to try and create a bit of a distraction to maybe allow the main bit of the Protoss army to move forward as well, but there's already a completed wall at the third base. I always like those wall-offs. I think they're pretty clever, because there's really not a whole lot that SCV can do. The problem is, right, you know as SCV here that you're not in the best of positions. You know that Terran is likely going to be attacking you at some point in the future, so he's just trying to slow down his army at whatever point he can, but ultimately, yeah, Terran is going to be starting up some sort of move out, although I say that, he fires up 2-2 immediately.
Do you remember there was a game, it was on, I want to say Death Aura was the map, TY versus Parting back in GSL a couple of years ago, and it was one of those things where TOI got a little bit behind early, so he never moved out, got like 20 tanks and just built this Sim City. And it was like the first game that we started to see Blink DT charge lot as a composition, but Parting hadn't been figured out yet, so Parting just eventually threw away too many units and lost. This is kind of what that feels like in terms of XY just turtling hard. Yeah, he's got an army on the north side, but we got this tank line, we have all these walls, more command centers, more production on the way. And it really becomes the question, because I don't think a lot of people would argue that, yeah, you know, late game Terran's been nerfed a little bit with the Liberator losing a range on extended range Liberators. But in general, I think a lot of people would say, you know, yeah, all things considered, if both players get maxed out, the late game Terran army is a little bit better. So now that XY or SCV, he's sitting here, he's got 5 Nexus, 5th Nexus just about done, doing a nice job of macroing up. How do you break the Terran? Because, you know, I don't think you want to fight 3-3 versus 3-3 with Ghosts and Vikings and a ton of tanks and everything else. Certainly not without, say, maybe getting into Sky Toss or something.
Yeah, there's a couple of different approaches, right, that we see Protoss players experiment with. A lot of players are a big fan of just going this mass gateway-based army and mass economy and loads of upgrades and all the rest of it. That is something that MaxSpecs, for example, has gotten quite a bit of success with, and that seems to be at least somewhat of a style that SCV here is mimicking a little. He's got some disruptors in the mix too, and that obviously are really good at creating a focus point for the Terran to micro with, right? And then suddenly those Zealot run-bys can be very dangerous. Alternatively, I guess he could go into Skytles here. Although XY may have just cornered on accident, like I was going to say, about a dozen Zealots, but they are going to get recalled out.
And it's interesting as we look at this as well, the Zealots are being rewarped in, so it's not one of those scenarios, but it does feel like, as we think, I mean, this is 21 Zealots in this army. It does feel like that might be a little bit much, especially now as...
I mean,
this is actually
XY, hello?
This is great for SCV. Okay, but no, we're going to be fine. That's a lot of Marines just eating Colossus shots, and all of a sudden, XY is going to have to back up. Now, luckily, Loco, he's got a ton of production. So the supply drops a little bit. It's not really something that SCV can really take advantage of, at least moving forward on the map. But what he can do, take a 6th Nexus. That he can do.
Yeah. He is trying to Zerg the Terran, right? It's been a style that Zerg players have been playing for many years. Just send in loads of units and try to overwhelm them. It can certainly work. The main goal that at this point becomes for SCV to try and prevent the Terran from taking any additional expansions from here. So he's got vision all over the map. He's going to take another base as well. Ultimately, though, there's going to have to be a way for the Protoss to deal with this massive army from the Terran player. Well, so far, he's doing a great job controlling all the bits of space.
Yeah, this is actually... Again, we talked about how these Zealots, the Disruptor doesn't hit incredibly well, but gets a bunch of Marines. We were talking about how the Zealots at a certain point are not incredible. This is a great concave coming out of our Terran player. All the Colossus dead immediately. Vikings are going to try to land as well, but I mean, Shield Battery Overcharge is doing a ton here. Yeah, sure, the Colossus are dead, but this army is not going to be able to wedge through. And what I wanted to say was that, well, Zealots in the main army at this point are maybe not incredible. What they are really good at doing is shutting down reinforcements, and SCV is doing such a fantastic job of that. He's killed a bunch of Marines, Marauders there on the reinforcing lines, Disruptors getting Ghosts, getting Marauders. And remember, while this fight actually relatively cost equal on the trades, SCV has so much more money that he has access to with more bases.
Yeah.
and more bases here.
So he's actually relatively low on the work account for a long while in this game, though. Right now he's sitting at 86, which I like a whole lot better, but I think you are aiming for like 90 probes or so with this style. He was sitting closer to like the 70s here for quite a while, so he doesn't actually have that much money at this point in the game. Still, though, as time goes on, he should be able to outmine his opponent quite a bit, because it's difficult for Terran to expand from here. Looks like, SCV has also found a bit of an angle here, potentially to cut the Terran off from their natural high ground. I'm assuming we're gonna, bowl a couple of disruptors just like that in that direction as well. SCV does bowl a strike, but he may have to back off here against that concave.
Yeah, well, you know, SCV is hungry. He wants to knock bases down, and I know Turkey is determined bowling, but I don't remember what it is. So we're going to get ourselves into trouble making references we don't understand. That being said, the Planetary was not a position that SCV wanted to fight into, so he did a really nice job of forcing his opponent down into it and then backing up a little bit. Now he's fighting under the Aegis of the Planetary, and that is damage. That's a lot of splash damage you got to be careful about, so he still does have to back up. But again, look at this. SCV.
He decides to go for that expansion of all expansions, huh? So XY is going to have a hard time securing a 5th base, and that's exactly what SCV is trying to do, right? He's trying to contain this Terran player on just the eco that they have. When you have a much better economy yourself, you can trade against these Terran armies, even if it's slightly cost inefficient, it should be fine. XY wants to go into that Mass Liberator style, but he can't really get it going. Another Nexus starts up for SCV. I mean, he needs to be careful he doesn't pull an XY here and get a little crazy with the amount of bases that he makes, but I think ultimately his army is just massive.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to be careful when you go up to, I know you mentioned 90 probes, 88 probes, or whatever it is. If you let the Terran max out, theoretically, their army is going to be much bigger than yours. But at this point, I mean, wait, how is that Nexus, where's that? Yeah, okay, no, that was the move topside. We have so many Nexus that we're looking at that as Niall goes and takes a look at things, what Nexus were we looking at? I don't know.
Those Disruptors almost killed everything, but luckily for XY, he does shut it down there in the end. I think ultimately, though, his economy is just fizzling out, right? He needs to get something done, and he needs to get it done quickly, but SCV is overwhelming all of this economy. He still has a lot of money in the bank, too. XY has got a ton of gas saved up, but no easy way for Terrans to drop that gas income. Okay, he snuck out an expansion at the 6 o'clock position. We do have Dark Templar, by the way, on the horizon, too. I mean, at this point, SCV can do whatever he likes, right? He doesn't have a ton of money because he's been trading so much, but The main and the natural here for XY are, well, pretty much empty. So that means that he needs another base.
He is mining. SCV is mining 4,000 minerals a minute. And by the way, that's not mule income. That is just workers here. Medevac's are going to fall down. And you talk about trading as much as you want. SCV and XY have been trading even, right? It's within 1,000 minerals of each other at this point. So SCV at this point is just, he's got the wallet, right? It's big, it's beefy, and he's just slapping XY upside the head with it. XY, when your opponent has 10 bases and you have 4, it's not an easy game to win.
No, that is the expert analysis that we needed after that very complex game for sure. Yeah, the economy there for SCV was just off the charts, right? His worker count was not quite as high as it probably could have been a little earlier on in the game, but he knew that the Terran army was absolutely massive. But ultimately, he played that game out really well in a style that we see very commonly on the Asian server in particular. This isn't really a style we see so much on in the European region. We don't really see this style very frequently against Terran either in the Americas, but it seems to be very popular in the Asian regionals. And yeah, just it's a very Zergy approach. That's the best way I can describe it, right? Try and take as many bases as you can, build up a massive economy, and then like soft contain the Terran player on, say, 4 bases, right? Sometimes it's 3 bases, sometimes it's 4, maybe a 5th base too. But basically, let them sit on their expansions for about 10 minutes. At some point, their resources will run out. And yeah, mission accomplished right there for SCV. He played that out really well. The trades like you brought up were incredibly efficient, despite the fact that he never really had much of a bank. Ultimately, he just kept mining more than his opponent, and he ended up with a massive army.
Yeah, you trade evenly, you mine 4,000 minerals a minute, and it's a pretty good way to win a game. You say it's something we don't see everywhere elsewhere. I do think back, Straya got to like, I think 120 probes against Koss back in an EPT Cup.
Yeah, it happens every once in a while. Like everybody experiments with it, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's one of those builds that's sort of born here on the Asian server where it's just, commonly played. Haas used to play this as well back in the day quite a bit, if you recall. I know that Nice mixed it in. Like basically all the Protoss players here like to show it off here from time to time.
Yeah, it's kind of, and thank you, Raynor, for probably reintroducing it into the meta a little bit more recently. So hey, just play Protoss like Zerg and you're gonna win a lot of games. But Loco, one way to win a lot of games is to get into games, as I realized that I don't have Niall. So there we go. One way to win a lot of games is to get into a lot of games, and Alcyone is another game. In the bottom left, as I continue to come up with worse and worse intros to get ourselves into games of StarCraft. Up 1, SCV.
And his opponent, in the top right-hand corner of Alcyone, it's XY. XY.
Loco, as a StarCraft fan, I gotta say I'm very happy that even though these games are, even though XY is playing these games, they're not sleepers. We're not forcing the XYZ. Okay, that was horrible.
We don't have the third axis. That's what we need.
Oh yeah.
We need a third dimension.
Makes sense. StarCraft's isometric. It's primarily, 2D game for the most part. I mean, I guess you have flyers, but those are like 2 stacked planes on it. There's no.
We need naval units. That's what we need.
I think I need to be able to, a battle cruiser. I think we need battleships.
That is a great idea. Yeah, we need water going around the maps and boats to be introduced as well.
So here's the question then: on a map like Oceanborn, do the ships sit like on top of the map so you can't really see them and they just drop depth charges?
Could be, man. I remember there was an RTS game way back in the day that had like dolphins. You could literally have dolphins as one of your units. Like this was like a human faction. I don't remember the name of them.
They're like laser dolphins or something. Like they're cyber. Like,
yeah, they were amazing. Somebody in the chat will probably remind us in about 2 minutes.
Was it a Command and Conquer game?
I think it may have been. Yeah, I don't remember exactly which one. This was back in the 90s, though, a long time ago.
Before my time, we've established that the Loco started streaming StarCraft about 40 years ago at this point. So
that's true. Yes.
Yeah, I'm only 27, Loco. So you're reaching back here.
No, I remember back in the 70s.
There we go.
Trying to send Dragoons across the map took a long time.
Especially because you're having to like physically build the Dragoon and then send it, like, you gotta put it in the fax machine piece by piece to send it on the other side of the map.
And it would load in, you know, pixel by pixel from top left to bottom right, so it would just take a long while.
Well, anyways, it's gonna be a Stargate opener. Is this our first Stargate opener in a PVT today?
Yeah, it may actually be. Yeah, that's kind of funny now you bring it up. But yeah, I think you may be right. I think this is, we've seen Blink Stalker every game. I think so.
So here's the question.
Talked about it a little bit ago. Obviously, it's a strong build, right? With the Oracle into Phoenixes, or even Mass Phoenixes into Colossi. Like, there's a couple of different transitions you can do. You can also go into a Twilight Council, and sometimes we see like a Charge Loss follow-up. So there is definitely quite a bit of variety. One of the nice advantages of going a Stargate compared to a Twilight Council opener is that, say your opponent wants to go for a Widowmine drop or any sort of medevac play like we saw from XY in the previous game, you can counter that relatively easily by just making a Phoenix or two, right? And shut down any medevacs that may be lurking in the shadows. With Stalkers, you can oftentimes just not reach them. That's going to actually be a Stargate right now into a Twilight Council.
Yeah, this is a build that I think back 2 years ago at this point, this was the new hotness. Going into a Katowice, every Protoss player I talked to, it was 3 years ago actually, every Protoss player I talked to said, look, Oracle into Blink is really, really good. You get map control, you get pressure on a mineral line if that's what you want to find, you have vision, you have all of these things. And then you move into Blink behind it, and it's this really cool 1-2 punch. And then, you know, Ryung came in with a 6-minute stim timing and killed it all over the place. So, you know, there was that. But it was the new hotness, and it's interesting to see SCV, who's this player who, I forget exactly when he started playing, but, you know, he's still, we would classify him as an up-and-comer, reaching back into his bag of tricks a little bit, going for this. And especially now that this is Oracle into 4-gate Blink. This is extremely committed on 2 bases.
Absolutely. Now, it comes down, I guess, to the amount of units here that XY will be able to produce. Luckily for him, he did not sneak out at a really quick 3rd command center that we've already seen. Don't lose the Oracle. Whew. That was close. That Oracle just flirting here with the mineral line for a moment. Because SCV actually does build a 3rd Nexus on the back of this too, so he will certainly commit. Main issue right now with these follow-up blinks is that you don't really have a ton of... Like, you don't really have a ton of time to get damage done, right? Because you're already going up against double siege tank right now. Blink isn't even finished yet. 3rd CC is going to spawn in just a moment.
Yeah, and what did we just... What did we just... Yeah, and look, what did we just say about this Oracle into Blink thing? And it was great until a 6-minute stim timing from Ryung went and killed it all. Loco, stim is done at 5:20. This is the 6-minute stim timing, so... Yep. You know, like... There's a reason this build didn't really take off.
And XY is going to even pull a few SCVs with it as well. See if he can potentially win the game right here, right now with this upcoming attack. Blink Stalker control, though, has gotten a lot better over the years, right? Protoss players these days don't really lose a lot of Stalkers against these sort of pushes. And in general, they really are good at slowing down this attack. SCV apparently feels confident enough to go into charge as well here. While this is all going on, he's going into a fort, so apparently he's not too concerned about this push. He did, by the way, build the base on the left side. So if XY moves on down towards this base down below here, yeah, he's in, he's not gonna find a whole lot. So he actually just drives back home.
Yeah, that was a cute try with the Oracle, right? You know, you drop a stasis trap and it just gets killed immediately, but you do force SCV to pay attention, and that's one of the things that, especially when we talk about these early Terran pushes, is you don't want the Terran just be able to focus on microing it and, you know, macroing back at home, but focusing on just microing at the front. Their army is really powerful at these timings, so you have a warp in, or you do something, or you have an Oracle in this case, just to distract them a little bit and make it a little bit harder to focus on 2 things at the same time. So now XY went for this timing, and actually the big deal is he didn't have medevac, so the Stalkers were able to just attrition out a ton of the army. He pulls SCVs, that doesn't really work out, has to pull them back home. He's already lost a couple SCVs from the, you know, just from the Oracle pressure. So at this point, XY is kind of in an awkward spot. He's now getting his starport, now going up to 5 racks, I think it is, so making the nap of it. Stalkers are in his natural, they're killing more SCVs, the tank takes damage, they can blink into the main base if they want to, and this feels really bad on the Stalkers. They will soak a tank shot, but now we're gonna see a stasis trap go down. It's gonna block off the ramp here, and all of a sudden, SCV is killing all the SCVs in the main base, and what's XY supposed to do? He's dead. He's gone.